If you have to roll a 2 plus to charge, don't roll a 1.
Hey guys, what's up? An interesting question came across my desk today. No, just kidding. It's more questions from the Parabellum Conquest Discord. Something very interesting came up as I was answering this question and then post answering the question. So the question by Mr. Kinzu. Hi y'all. Question about combat reform that happened a while ago in our game, as we are still grasping on the rules to understand. For this situation, the Praetorians want to do a combat reform to get as many stands in contact to the blooded. However, the Ziliarch is at the rightmost end of the regiment. Can it be possible for him to do a combat reform? We read that the center must not move more than half of its movement. I don't think they will make a legal formation because this will possibly make the Ziliarch go to the back rank. How can combat reform be solved in this situation, or get as many stands in contact to the blooded? Okay, so this young gentleman has a question about combat reform with a character stand on the far end of the regiment, the Praetorian Guard, and it's a very legitimate question. It's actually one that I've come across very rarely, but not in a long time, so I had to kind of refresh my rules knowledge about this. Luckily for me, the work was done for me because another person, Mr. Sigma, went ahead and answered the question. Everyone shifts 2 squares to make the new 2x2. Stays facing forward, so the Ziliarch is in the front rank as he doesn't have the movement to move into combat or into contact. Red is the center of the formation moving, and I look at this picture and I'm thinking, yeah, that's correct. So I immediately answer, yeah, that's right. It'll take a second reform to get the Ziliarch into contact with the blooded, because in this picture, the Ziliarch is now right here, okay? And the front arc is still right here. So the blooded is in the flank of the Praetorian Guard, and to get the Ziliarch over, let's say, here or here, you need to make a second reform action, which you'll do during that regiment's next activation. And then I said I tend to stick my characters at the end of regiments for seek new escort possibilities, and this does happen rarely. So rarely, I forgot the rules for reform. Because I sat here looking at that picture, and I wanted to make a video about this question and then the simple answer, thanking Sigma for the quick answer, etc., etc. So I have this little, my little Photoshop kind of deal going on here. And then as I was moving the squares around, oh, it's simple. This stand moves here, this stand moves here, okay? And this stand moves here. Just like Sigma said, right? And that answers the question. Boom, there you go. Then I realized, hold on a second, this Photoshop has grids, and the stands were moving in grids. And the way Sigma answered the question, everyone shifts 2 squares. What do you mean everyone shifts 2 squares? That's not a thing in the rules. You move no further than your march characteristic for the individual stand. So you don't shift squares, which is what everyone does. Even I do it. I looked at the rules for reforming, but this is specifically a combat reform, and I came across this, right? Clean reform, which is what we're doing in this situation, okay? If your regiment performs a clean reform, it immediately adopts a new legal formation, okay? Facing any direction. The center of the regiment must not move a distance greater than half of the lowest march characteristic of any stand in the regiment rounded up. Now, I never got this rounded up thing. It makes no sense. If the regiment's lowest march characteristic is 5, then the center of the regiment cannot move more than 2.5 inches. There is no rounding up when it comes to measurement. There are no whole numbers with the, moving in inches. You just move in 2.5 inches. So that rounded up is not needed, but that's not the point of this video. Basically, the Praetorian Regiment, lowest march characteristic is 5. The Ziliarch has 5, and each stand in the regiment has 5. Half of that is 2.5 inches. So as Sigma pointed out, the center of the regiment is currently right here. And if you're adopting this new 2x2 formation, the center of the regiment cannot move more than 2.5 inches, and the center would be right there. Okay, that's actually all correct. 2.5 inches is enough to get the center of the regiment here to here. But once again, let's go back to the rules here. And no stand may move further than its march characteristic. So we're not talking about shifting stands like we're in a grid. We're talking about the physical stands cannot move more than its march characteristic, okay? I need to double check my work, okay? That's basically what happened. So I broke out the good old ruler and some stands, okay? Now, on the side note, the cav stands are created just slightly larger than infantry stands. So whenever you make these 3D printed triple stand holders, the cav stands always have an issue, as you can see right here, fitting in there. You gotta force them in, and another one pops up. So I don't know why Parabellum prints the cav stands slightly larger than the infantry stands. There's a logistical reason for it. I'm sure there is, but I'm explaining that not because I'm complaining about the stands. It's the reason why I have the infantry stand and 2 cav stands. I just explaining that I had these stands on hand by my computer. I had 3 cav and 1 infantry, and I just wanted to make them fit properly in the 3D printed stand holder. That's why. Okay, so ignore all the stands here. They're all basically infantry stands in a sense, okay? Now, you'll notice that if you were to take a tape measure, because of the nature of the camera and how it's capturing the image, the 5 is going to be upside down, right? No matter what I do, it's going to be upside down, okay? And flipping the image is not going to matter. So the 5 is right here, okay? And if you take the triple stands and you take the 5 and you put the 5 right in the center of the stand, which is where it's at right here, you will notice that the 5 is at the center of this rightmost stand, but the 5 does not reach the center of the third stand, okay? Are just slightly larger than 2.5 inches, okay? Which means the edge of this stand right here, if you put the 5 on the edge of the stand right here, okay? The 5 is like on the edge of the stand, you'll notice that it does not reach the edge of the furthest stand, okay? Do you see where I'm getting with this? Going back to our Photoshop example, that means that when you reform, you are not reforming in a grid. That's not how the rules work. You're reforming by movement. What that comes down to is this. A stand with a march characteristic of 5 cannot reform move more than 1 stand away. So this stand here, stand here, stand here, right? So this stand here, when it reforms, it cannot occupy the space of this stand. The most it can do is occupy it right here. In combat, I cannot disengage from the enemy regiment. So this stand right here cannot move anywhere. It can only move, let's say, right here or right here. What it cannot do is it cannot move, if you're looking at it real close, it cannot move right there. Okay? So it is locked in there, which means, let's say this stand moves over here during a combat reform, and this stand moves right over here during a combat reform. This stand can only move here or here or here. So you only choose one of these 2 spots. So let's say that you take this stand and you move it here. The Ziliarch is also a March 5 stand. The Ziliarch can move here, and the Ziliarch can move right about there. But it cannot move here. And this right here is not a legal formation. The Praetorian Regiment right here activates, okay? And let's say this stand moves over here, can do that. This stand can move here, can do that. The Ziliarch, it can do that. This is a legal formation only if you're facing up. This is not a legal formation if you're facing to the left. The Ziliarch cannot go here. The Ziliarch can only go here or here. And this is obviously not a legal formation either. Now, if we were to move them back to where they were, if this stand here decided to move over here, which it can, the Ziliarch cannot move here. It can only move either here, which is an illegal formation, or over here, which is a legal formation if you're facing down. But now let's say you go to the second, let's say the Wadroon Regiment on the left and the Praetorian Regiment on the right, they fight and no stands die. We now go to the next round, where the Praetorians will go ahead and do another reform. This stand here, once again, can only move here, but the Ziliarch cannot move anywhere. And no, once again, the Ziliarch cannot move here because you're not moving in a grid. The most the Ziliarch can move is right about there. Well, let's move them back to how they were. If you took this stand here and moved it, I don't know, here, and this stand here and moved it here, which you can't. If you took the Ziliarch and tried to move him to be in engagement, that's more than 5 inches. The Ziliarch can't do it. So once you get into this formation, you can't do it. You can't reform. This is actually where you're stuck. Unless you move, because you can't move these stands out of engagement. This is the final formation you can take. I guess if you want, you can shuffle this guy up here and move this guy here. You can do that. Or you can switch the two, right? Hold on. Or you switch the two. But you can't do that. Front facing is up. And your command stand is right here. Combat Reform does not currently work. Or, let me put it this way. Combat Reform, as I've seen people play the game, and as I have played the game, where you just shuffle the stands as if it's a grid, does not work. Does not work that way at all. And I encourage all of you to take a ruler and check this out for yourself. Now, let's say there's an error in my ruler. Let's say my ruler is incorrect, or the stands I got were all printed incorrect. That's a possibility. That's an unknown. I now know it's an unknown, right? But I would like everyone out there to take your rulers and check this out. So let's go back to the final answer. Is it possible to get the Zilliarch, go to the back rank? No. Characters always have to be in the front rank. And how can Combat Reform be solved in this situation or get as many stands in contact as the Blooded? To answer your question directly, when you Combat Reform, your command stand here needs to be in the front rank. So we're going to move it over here. And this stand moves over here. And your character stand moves over here. That's not possible. So the command stand actually would have to be right over here. And this is the front. And you're done. You can't, because of the Zilliarch, you can't reform anymore. Now, once a stand dies, it might be easier, but I don't want to get into that here. This is actually the final position that you could ever get. Technically, if you want, you can get your front rank facing up, but the Wadroon will still be in your flank. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and join my Patreon. And remember, when you need a 2+ to charge, make sure you're measuring your march distance for your stand distance and not moving the stands in a made-up, invented grid, which is what I've been doing since I've been playing this game. All right? Peace out, guys.